On our anniversary, I was a few minutes late because of traffic. When I finally arrived at the private room, I hesitated at the door, hearing teasing laughter from inside. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open slightly and peeked in. The door wasn't fully closed, and through the dazzling, chaotic lights, I saw a familiar figure. Edmund was sitting in the center of the crowd, his arm wrapped around a woman with a graceful figure. She clung to him like she was boneless, and the two were locked in an inseparable kiss. From my angle, I could even see the veins on Edmund's hand as it gripped her waist tightly. It looked as if he wanted to crush her into his very being. I stared at the scene, my hands clenching and unclenching at my sides. So, the rumors were true. The woman Edmund had once loved but couldn't have during his lowest moments had returned. The atmosphere in the room grew increasingly heated, and I quietly closed the door for them. In fact, today wasn't just the third anniversary of our relationship, it was also my birthday. 3 years ago, Edmund had confessed his love to me in the pouring rain, holding a bouquet of roses. His intense gaze had cut through the misty rain, landing squarely on my face. He had looked so nervous, as if a single rejection from me would shatter him completely. And now, 3 years later, on this day that was supposed to be special for us, he was passionately kissing her in front of everyone. The same man who, just last night, had promised me a surprise with all the sincerity in the world. I let out a bitter laugh and leaned against the doorframe. Over these 3 years, I had lashed out at him in frustration more times than I could count. But disappointment had piled up, one layer after another. Now, even witnessing this humiliating scene, I only felt a sense of relief. I flicked my lighter open and closed, staring at the flickering flame, lost in thought. Suddenly, it hit me. The way I looked at Edmund was like that flame. It had burned brightly when we first met. And now, it had quietly, silently, gone out. After what felt like an eternity, someone inside finally brought me up. "Edmund, aren't you afraid Joanna will be upset about you and Kristen?" "Why should she be? She's put up with all the other women Edmund's been with these past 3 years. If you ask me, Joanna can't live without him." Edmund stayed silent. Kristen stiffened, biting her lower lip as tears welled up in her eyes. "Edmund, you don't have to feel conflicted. I just wanted to see you one more time. I've missed you so much all these years. It's my fault, but I just couldn't help myself." Edmund lit a cigarette, his lips pressed into a thin line. Kristen tried to pry his hand off her waist, tears streaming down her face. "Joanna will be here soon. I shouldn't disturb you anymore. Edmund, thank you for letting me have you, even if it was just for a little while. I'm happy, truly. I wish you and Joanna all the best." With that, Kristen, her eyes red, grabbed her bag and made to leave. The room fell into an awkward silence, but no one dared to stop her on Edmund's behalf. After all, compared to this sudden reappearance of his first love, Edmund and I had been together for 3 solid years. Just as Kristen was about to push the door open and run into me, Edmund finally snapped. He strode forward and pulled the trembling woman into his arms. "Kristen, it's not what you think between Joanna and me." He kissed her forehead repeatedly, his hand gently brushing away her tears. With a soft laugh, he murmured, "What do you mean, wish us happiness? I only want to be with you forever. I'll explain everything to Joanna. You don't need to worry about anything. Just stay by my side." Kristen shot him a playful glare, her tears turning into a smile. On the other side of the wall, I smirked, coldly. My wavering heart finally settled. "Edmund, you don't need to explain anything to me. If this is what you want, then so be it. We have no future together." It was just a change of leading lady, and our 3rd anniversary had now become the first day of their reunion. The room quickly grew lively again. I pulled out the gift I had spent 6 months preparing and began burning the stack of photos of us, one by one. The flames leaped and spread, devouring the images of our smiling faces. As the ashes fell, it felt like a chapter of my life had finally closed. Before I turned to leave, the last thing I saw was Kristen tilting her head, seductively licking the wine dripping down Edmund's throat. Edmund's eyes darkened, desire burning in his gaze. Kristen is so gentle and considerate. Edmund is really lucky. If Joanna were here, she'd just nag Edmund to drink less. So boring. Congratulations to Edmund for finally getting what he wanted, a beauty in his arms. Edmund smirked, a flash of triumph in his eyes. He cupped Kristen's face and kissed her deeply, despite her half-hearted attempts to pull away. I gave them one last indifferent glance, stepped over the ashes, and walked away. I didn't look back. While packing my things at the villa, I suddenly received a friend request. It was from Kristen. After a moment's hesitation, I accepted. Soon, Kristen sent me an audio recording. Edmund, Joanna didn't show up tonight. Is she mad at you? Does she know about us? I don't want to be the other woman. The sound of their intimate murmuring filled the air, followed by Edmund's soothing voice. Don't worry, sweetheart. It's not your fault. Honestly, I've been bored with her for a while now. I just felt sorry for her because she was so serious, so I didn't break it off. Joanna, she's like a goddess from afar, but up close, she's just ordinary. In bed, she's like a dead fish. So dull. She's nothing compared to you. What if she refuses to break up with you? I'll handle it. Don't worry, sweetheart. Ford, call Joanna later and tell her to find a hotel for tonight. I'm taking Kristen home. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. I stared blankly at the darkened screen, my mind buzzing. If I hadn't heard it with my own ears, I would never have believed it. To please another woman, Edmund had belittled me behind my back to such an extent. I thought he was just a womanizer. But now I realized he was rotten to the core. These 3 years with Edmund hadn't been without their sweet moments. When he was pursuing me, it felt like he had used every sweet word in the world. Not only that, he had shown it through his actions, treating me like a treasure. He always put me first, making me his priority in everything. Every word I said got a response, every request was fulfilled. Once, while we were walking and I casually mentioned wanting to see the northern lights, he called me in the middle of the night and dragged my sleepy self onto a plane headed north. We never did see the aurora, but I'll always remember the way my heart raced when we embraced in the snowy wilderness. Back then, he had made me feel like he loved me more than he loved himself. But then, everything changed. At some point, other women started appearing around him. And his responses to me became increasingly. Perhaps, while he was degrading me to please Kristen, he had forgotten. He had once stood in the pouring rain, holding his heart out to me, begging for my love. Joanna, from now on, I'll be the one holding your umbrella on every rainy day. His words, so firm and full of conviction, still echoed in my ears. But his heart had completely changed. So, what is love? Love is writing poetry in the snow, watching it disappear as you write. Love is making promises in the rain, only for them to vanish when the sun comes out. True love is precious, priceless. But true love is also fleeting. In the middle of a stormy night, I dragged my suitcase to the airport. After 3 years of stubbornly holding on, the ending wasn't what I had hoped for. But at least I could walk away with a clear conscience. I had even thoughtfully erased all traces of my existence for him. The only thing I left behind was a custom photo frame. It was heavy, originally meant to hold the photos I had burned earlier. Now that the photos were gone, the frame was useless. I told the housekeeper to burn it when she had the chance. She clearly didn't know what had happened. She just looked at my resolute expression and sighed. You young people are always so impulsive. You don't realize that sometimes, when you turn away, you might miss someone for the rest of your life. Miss someone for the rest of my life? I smiled faintly and handed her the keys. I hope so. I used to not understand why female leads in movies always moved to a new city after a breakup. Now I get it. A city filled with memories can feel suffocating. Just thinking about the past feels like a thorn in my throat. Walking through the streets of Country Z, the unfamiliar surroundings gave me a sense of freedom and renewal. I had studied business in college, but with my older brother managing the family company, I had taken up painting in my spare time. This trip to Country Z was my parents' way of supporting me after everything that had happened. Not only did they agree to let me pursue art, but they also helped me find a mentor. That's how I met Hiram. The cafe was filled with soothing music, and the warm sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The rich aroma of coffee filled the air. I rested my chin on my hand, lazily watching the picturesque autumn scenery. My mood slowly calmed as I watched the leaves twirl and fall. Among the scattered pedestrians on the street, one figure suddenly caught my eye. Hiram was wearing a black coat, his tall frame exuding an air of elegance. The hem of his coat swayed slightly, revealing his long legs with each step. His cold, amber eyes seemed detached from the bustling world around him. When he sat down across from me, he gave a slight nod, his expression unreadable. I was momentarily stunned by his beauty, at a loss for words. He didn't speak, so I slowly sipped my coffee. Only when my cup was empty did he finally react, glancing at his expensive watch before saying in a calm voice, "Joanna, right? Let's go." I had expected Hiram to take me to his studio. Instead, he brought me to his home. "The neighborhood isn't very safe. It's better if you stay here with me. Your father asked me to look after you, and I think it's best to keep you close. If you don't mind, I prepared a room for you upstairs. I'll help you with your luggage later." His voice was gentle and soothing. I nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed. Being in a stranger's house gave me a sense of vulnerability, but it was undoubtedly safer. Hiram seemed to sense my unease. He hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. His large hand gently ruffled my hair. It was meant to be comforting, but after a moment, he absent-mindedly smoothed it down again, a small smile tugging at his lips. When he noticed me staring, his ears turned bright red, and he quickly looked away. His awkwardness was oddly endearing, and I found myself unable to look away. It wasn't until he turned his head, his neck flushed, that I realized I was being rude. I quickly lowered my gaze. His voice, calm as ever, came from above me. "Are you hungry? I'll make something for you." Before I could respond, he had already bolted to the kitchen. How unexpectedly shy. Hiram stopped halfway, turned back, and walked up to me again. Meeting my puzzled gaze, he coughed lightly. His hand returned to my head, gently smoothing my hair once more. "Sorry, I messed it up. Mr. Hiram, I suspect you have ulterior motives, but I have no proof." Hiram's cooking wasn't just bad, it was inedible. After 2 bites, I marched into the kitchen with determination. Hiram hesitated but took a bite of what I had made. Without a word, he threw the entire bowl into the trash. I refused to believe it and tried to bite myself. It was worse than his. "Please tell me you don't eat like this every day." I stared at his culinary disaster in disbelief. Hiram looked conflicted but eventually pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, come back." After a proper meal, I leaned back, patting my full stomach. "Why did you send the housekeeper away in the first place? Were you trying to starve yourself?" Hiram avoided my gaze, muttering something under his breath. I didn't catch it. "What?" He looked up, his expression serious. "I thought I could take care of you." He was supposed to be looking after me on my father's behalf, but the way he said it made my face heat up. Seeing my reaction, he smiled faintly, his eyes softening. "I didn't do well this time, but I'll try harder next time." "Try harder at what?" "At taking care of you, at." My heart raced, and I had a feeling he was about to say something outrageous. I quickly looked away, cutting him off. "Oh, thank you." After living with Hiram for a few months, we grew closer. I realized that Hiram wasn't as cold and distant as he appeared. In fact, he was more thoughtful and warm than most people I had met. He always seemed to sense my hidden emotions, soothing them in his own way. When I first arrived, I had felt lost and helpless due to the language barrier and unfamiliar environment. I didn't know how he noticed, since I tried my best to hide it. But he started finding excuses to take me out, traveling, meeting his friends, and helping me adapt. The process was slow and tedious, but Hiram patiently guided me, offering his support in his own quiet way. Even his disastrous cooking gradually improved to suit my tastes. Being loved truly does help you grow. In just 6 months, I had gained 6 pounds. But more than my weight, my heart had changed. Under Hiram's care, my once dry heart became vibrant and full again. Though he was often quiet and reserved, I found his clumsy, careful affection more endearing than Edmund's empty sweet talk. It was during that time that a tiny seed of longing for Hiram began to sprout in my heart. When Hiram once again used the excuse of a friend's cat doing backflips to take me out, I bit my lip and took his hand. "You're such an idiot," I muttered softly. Hiram paused, then smiled, intertwining his fingers with mine. His usually cold eyes were filled with warmth, the affection in them almost overflowing. This man had no idea how charming he was. I looked down, trying to suppress my smile. My heart was racing, the little deer inside me jumping for joy. Driven by my deep passion for painting, I spent every day immersed in learning, following Hiram around without realizing how quickly time was passing. Before I knew it, I had been in Country Z for a full year. Those dark memories now felt like they belonged to another lifetime. One day, my best friend Destiny suddenly sent me a text. Edmund and Kristen broke up. I heard it was pretty messy. Lately, Edmund's been looking everywhere for you. He can't reach you, and he's been acting like a madman, almost ready to call the police. Are you planning to come back? If you still have feelings for him, The chat box kept showing typing. It was clear Destiny didn't want us to get back together, but she was worried I might do something reckless for him. During the 3 years I was with Edmund, his possessiveness had caused me to drift apart from almost all my friends. Only Destiny, despite being neglected, never held it against me or distanced herself. She had subtly criticized Edmund many times, though I hadn't listened back then. But now, I pursed my lips and glanced up quickly. Hiram was leaning against the window, his long legs casually crossed. His jade-like fingers held a paintbrush, his eyes downcast, his long lashes fluttering like butterfly wings. I quickly typed a reply while Hiram was absorbed in his painting. I'm not coming back. I found someone I like. Destiny replied almost instantly, oh my god. You've finally come to your senses. I've always said you could have anyone you wanted, but you were so hung up on Edmund, it drove me crazy. Show me a picture. What does he look like? I couldn't help but smile, my lips curving slightly. On a whim, I actually raised my phone and secretly snapped a photo of Hiram's profile. I hereby declare you two married. I need all his info in 3 minutes. I've dated more men than you, so I'll vet him for you. I held my phone, unable to suppress my grin. Handsome, rich, broad shoulders, slim waist, and long legs. Most importantly, he's never been in a relationship before. Totally pure. I was engrossed in the conversation when I suddenly noticed a shadow above me. Looking up, I saw Hiram leaning over me, his arms on either side of my chair, effectively trapping me. His amber eyes were fixed on my screen, a captivating smile playing on his perfect lips. Why did you stop? Is there something about me you don't know? Hiram used the tip of his paintbrush to lift my wrist. The gentle pressure guided my hand to rest on his firm abs. I instinctively swallowed hard. Hiram's deep voice took on a hint of something indescribably. Why don't you find out for yourself what else about me you might like? He was so close that his last words were practically whispered into my ear. The warmth of his breath against my sensitive earlobe made me blush like a boiled shrimp. But he wasn't done. He leaned in closer, his nose brushing against mine, his voice low and hypnotic. Go ahead. Tell me what you like most about me. I tried to turn my head, but Hiram pulled me into his arms instead. He didn't let me escape, his mesmerizing eyes locked on mine. His lips parted slightly as he spoke, you love me too, don't you? My mind went blank, and I didn't even notice the significance of his use of the word too. All I could do was stare at his face as it drew closer, my lips growing dry. I instinctively licked my lips, and his eyes darkened, his Adam's apple bobbing. On a whim, I reached out and lightly touched it. Just as I was about to pull my hand back, he caught my wrist. The heat from his grip spread up my arm. My heart was pounding like a drum. With his beauty right in front of me, I decided to throw caution to the wind. I covered his eyes with my free hand and boldly kissed him. His lips were soft, and I barely brushed against them before pulling away. But he wasn't having it. In one swift motion, he pulled me onto his lap. I was burning up, flustered and squirming to escape. He let out a low groan and held me tightly. His voice was hoarse, you're not getting away. His heated kisses trailed down my neck, leaving a blazing path in their wake. The night was deep, and the summer breeze slipped through the thin curtains, filling the room. Hiram had me pinned to the bed, my mind in a haze as I whispered his name. His dark hair was damp with sweat, his hot breath brushing against my neck and ear as he murmured my name over and over. Dizzy and lost, I reached up to touch his shoulders, but he caught my hand and intertwined our fingers. Hiram. My voice was broken and uneven, a soft whimper escaping my lips. Suddenly, my phone on the bedside table vibrated. Hiram reached over to silence it, but the caller was persistent. After a storm of passion, Hiram lay on top of me, breathing heavily. His usually clear, composed eyes were still clouded with desire. He kissed my lips gently, almost apologetically, before handing me the phone. The screen showed Destiny calling. Thinking it might be urgent, I quickly answered. But the voice on the other end was one I knew all too well. "Joanna, enough is enough. Come home." "Where are you?" "I'll come get you, okay?" Hiram chuckled softly, his voice low and possessive. "Mr. Edmund, what business do you have calling my woman in the middle of the night?" He leaned down and whispered in my ear, loud enough for the phone to pick up, "Your ex is looking for you." There was a moment of silence on the other end before Edmund's voice erupted in a furious roar. "Who are you? Why are you with Joanna? What are you doing?" Hiram laughed lazily, the redness from our earlier passion still lingering at the corners of his eyes. "Edmund, it's 10 p.m. where you are, but here, it's already the middle of the night. A man and a woman awake in the middle of the night. What do you think we're doing?" I nestled in Hiram's arms, yawning lazily. A good ex should stay dead. "Edmund, aren't you ashamed?" Destiny later called to apologize, saying Edmund had gone on a drunken rampage that night, speeding in his car and nearly getting himself killed. I brushed it off and changed the subject. Maybe he was genuinely remorseful, but no one waits forever. I've experienced his cheap, shallow love. It's not worth revisiting or even mentioning. Thankfully, letting go of the wrong person makes room for the right one. Hiram gave me all the security I needed. After we officially became a couple, he quickly proposed on a special day, bringing all his assets as a gesture of commitment. I'll always remember that moment. The gentle breeze, the calm waves, the sunset reflecting on the sea. The scene was so soft and beautiful it felt surreal. Hiram, dressed in a rare suit, stood amidst a sea of roses, looking like a god. He gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his expression impossibly tender. "Joanna, in your mind, we've only known each other for a little over 300 days. But in truth, I've known you for many years. The first time I saw you was at an art exhibition. I wasn't famous yet, and everyone was crowded around a painting called Faded. But you chose my moonlight, and you stood there, tilting your head, gazing at it for hours. Later, I found out you were Jack's daughter, but by then, you already had a boyfriend. I thought we'd never cross paths again, but fate brought you to me." He took my hand and kissed it gently. "Joanna, I won't miss you again. I know you've been through a lot, but I want you to know that with me, you can always be yourself. You can express anything, and I'll always stand by you, no matter what. You have your flaws, but my love will make you whole. Joanna, I love you. I don't want you to be a fantasy in my paintings. I want you to be the leading lady in my life. I want to see you every morning when I wake up." The sea breeze was gentle, his voice soft and lingering. I looked up at the reflection of myself in his eyes and quietly sniffled. So, fate had brought us together long ago. We had just missed each other for so many years. The candlelight flickered, casting our close figures on the wall. I rose onto my tiptoes and kissed him. After Edmund was discharged from the hospital, he started acting out. Destiny called me multiple times to vent. "Joanna, you have no idea how crazy he's become. He keeps asking me for your address." I got so annoyed, I told him, "Go die, and I'll give it to you." Next thing I know, he drags me into his car, speeds to the beach, and jumps into the sea. It all happened so fast, I barely had time to react. If I hadn't called the police, that lunatic would have been buried by now. I caught on to a key detail. "So, you told him?" Destiny hesitated for a few seconds. "My signal's bad. Gotta go." Me. Though I had mentally prepared myself for the possibility of running into him, I didn't expect it to happen so soon. After an auction, I was walking arm in arm with Hiram, admiring the new jade bracelet on my wrist. The bracelet hung loosely, complementing my fair skin, giving off an elegant yet cool vibe. We had bought 3 bracelets that day, the other 2 were rare, high-quality pieces Hiram had gifted to my mom and his own mother. Suddenly, Hiram stopped in his tracks. He narrowed his eyes at the figure ahead, a flicker of disdain crossing his face. I raised an eyebrow, noticing Hiram's sudden tension. Before I could ask, a familiar, trembling voice reached my ears. "Joanna." Edmund's eyes were red, his expression soft. His gaze was filled with an almost overwhelming longing. It had been over 2 years since we last saw each other, and he looked like a completely different person. Gone was the confident, carefree man I once knew. Now, he seemed lonely and desolate, like stagnant water. Our eyes met, and I could clearly see the regret and sorrow in his. Strangely, seeing him like this gave me a secret sense of satisfaction. I couldn't help but smile. Edmund seemed to misinterpret my smile, his eyes lighting up with hope. "Joanna, I'm here to take you home." Hiram frowned and stepped in front of me, shielding me. I tugged at his sleeve and said softly, "It's okay. I can handle this." Edmund eagerly reached for my hand, but I quickly stepped back, avoiding his touch, and instead interlaced my fingers with Hiram's. Edmund's hand froze midair, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. His once straight posture slumped, as if weighed down by an invisible burden. I thought someone as prideful and stubborn as him would storm off after seeing this. But he just swallowed hard, forcing down his emotions. When he looked up again, his dark eyes were cautious, almost pleading, as he said, "Joanna, I've reprinted all the photos you burned. I couldn't find the original frame, but I had an identical one made. I've hung our pictures in the most prominent spot in our home. I look at them every day, thinking of you. I've missed you so much, it's driving me insane. Joanna, I was wrong. I took your love for granted and hurt you. I've truly realized my mistakes, and I promise I'll treat you better from now on. We've been together for 3 years, over 1,000 days. Can you really let that go? Joanna, please, just give me one more chance. Come back with me, and we'll get married. I'll give you the grandest wedding, and I swear I'll never look at anyone else." Edmund knelt on one knee, trembling as he pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a dazzling diamond. Edmund looked at me with hopeful eyes, his expression tense and pleading, as if my answer would determine his fate. I'd seen that look before. It was the same look he had when he first confessed his feelings to me. I'd made the mistake of falling for it once, and I'd learned my lesson. I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Maybe the old me, the one who hadn't given up on him, would have softened at his seemingly sincere apology. But I'd been deceived by him for 3 years. If I forgave him so easily just because he seemed remorseful, then all the pain I'd endured would have been my own fault. I glanced at his bloodshot eyes and spoke softly. "It's too late, Edmund." Edmund froze, his eyes trembling, his lips pressed into a tight line. But he stubbornly held up the pink diamond. "What are you talking about? I don't understand. Look, I went through so much to get this diamond. You once told me it was your favorite." I stared at the pink diamond for a long time before letting out a bitter laugh. How ironic. In 3 years with Edmund, I'd never received something like this. Yet now, after we'd broken up, here it was. People always seem to realize the depth of their love only after they've lost it. But I twisted the ring on my finger, the matching set with Hiram gleaming in the light. When I looked up at Edmund, my eyes were cold and distant. "You and this diamond are both flawed. Your realization, your regret, and your cheap love. They all came too late. I don't care anymore." I looked at him with cold indifference, calmly revealing the disgust I felt toward him. Edmund swayed unsteadily, almost losing his balance. The color drained from his face in an instant. "Don't do this. Didn't we promise to grow old together? How long have you even known him? What gives you the right to compare that with our 3 years?" He shouted, his voice trembling and raw with emotion, completely exposing his vulnerability. But I only laughed coldly, as if I'd heard the most ridiculous joke. "Edmund, you're so deep in your act that you've even convinced yourself, haven't you? Think back, did you ever mean those sweet nothings you used to whisper to me?" Edmund opened his mouth to speak, but not a single word of rebuttal came out. I used to mistake a worthless stone for a precious gem. Fortunately, I've finally found the one who truly belongs to me. I smiled gently and squeezed Hiram's warm, slender hand, never sparing Edmund another glance. "Let's go." "All right." As we walked past him, Edmund suddenly called out to me. He remained kneeling on the ground, his head hanging low as if all the strength had left his body. Joanna. If I had swallowed my pride and admitted my mistakes earlier, would you have forgiven me? I paused for a brief moment, letting out a quiet sigh and closing my eyes. You still don't understand why we ended up here. I know your issues stem from your upbringing, you have insecurities, you always need to test people. That's not your fault. But tell me, what did I do wrong? Why should my sincerity be trampled on like that? I never hated you, Edmund. But I'll never forgive you either. The tear-soaked pillows, the nights I endured through gritted teeth. I even started doubting myself because of you. Isn't that pathetic? So, no, Edmund. There was never a future for us. The pain you caused me is something you can never make up for, and I don't need you to. I realized a long time ago, you never loved me as much as you pretended to. Those sweet words you used to say were nothing but lies. I stayed not because I couldn't see through you, but because I wanted to believe I made the right choice when I agreed to be with you. I was too stubborn to admit I was wrong. I spent 3 years trying to convince myself I had simply misjudged you. Nothing more. I spoke as if I were calm, but deep down, the sadness was overwhelming. Not for Edmund. But for the girl I used to be, the one who once believed in the beauty of first love. My brother once had a huge fight with me over Edmund. He knew I was being mistreated but couldn't understand why I insisted on staying. In his words, when you encounter someone emotionally broken, someone no amount of love can fix, let go immediately. Life isn't a movie. We can't save other people. Especially those who play with others' feelings and never value real love. The smartest thing to do is to cut your losses and walk away before they drag you down into their darkness. My brother and I bickered for over 20 years, but it took me this long to understand his point. Wasting your emotions on someone who doesn't deserve it is the greatest betrayal of your own life. Still, it's not too late to wake up now. After that day, I never saw Edmund again. No one mentioned his name in my life ever again, until the day I married Hiram. A servant brought over a gift box. When I opened it, I found a photo frame. It looked just like the custom frame I once ordered, only smaller. It was empty, there was no photo inside. Hiram took the frame from me, and as if he already knew, he flipped it over. A slip of yellow stationery peeked out from the back. Hiram raised an eyebrow and held it out to me. Want to read it? I couldn't help but laugh at the way he tried to hide his jealousy behind a calm facade. Why not? I teased, pretending to open the letter. As expected, he tensed up immediately, like he was bracing for a fight. Relax, I said, wrapping my arms around his. It's just trash, why bother? His expression softened as he tossed the frame into a rarely used cabinet. Joanna, I trust you, and I'll always respect your decisions. I'll keep it here. If you ever change your mind. I grabbed the frame and casually tossed it into the trash. Then, tugging on his collar, I pushed him down onto the bed and silenced him with a kiss. Hiram, I whispered against his lips, if you were a little bolder, a little more aggressive. I might have been yours a long time ago. His eyes darkened as his heated hands slid around my waist, tracing slow, deliberate circles. In the dim light, his voice dropped to a husky whisper. If I knew this was what you wanted, I would have stopped holding back. With a swift motion, my dress was torn apart and cast to the floor. Behind his broad shoulders, my high heels dangled precariously off the edge of the bed. We went at it until late into the night. I was so exhausted I could barely lift my arms. Yet, behind me, he still wasn't satisfied, his hand held my ankle firmly as he pulled me closer again. Baby, he murmured in a teasing tone, do you like me being this assertive? I kicked at him weakly, biting my lip in frustration. You're such a jerk. That only seemed to excite him more. With a low groan, he said, God, I love it when you talk like that. The moonlight spilled softly into the room, wrapping us in its quiet glow. Later, as I leaned against the balcony, letting the cool breeze wash over me, warm hands suddenly covered my eyes. Hiram kissed the nape of my neck, his voice full of affection. Joanna, you're more beautiful than the moonlight. Extra, Edmund. The truth is, Edmund regretted everything. That night, when he left the private room and saw the half-burned photos scattered across the floor, a sharp pain pierced his chest. He brushed it off and went home with Kristen in his arms. But as soon as he stepped inside, the house felt empty, eerily so. Everything connected to Joanna was gone, as if she had never been part of his life. The servants hesitated, wanting to speak but biting their tongues. Kristen, oblivious, giggled and urged him to join her in the shower. Later, when they fell into bed, she was all seduction, soft, alluring, irresistible. But then he caught a glimpse of the crumpled silk sheets, the same ones Joanna had chosen. The clash of her light, elegant scent against Kristen's heavy perfume felt suffocating. Irritated, he pushed Kristen aside and lit a cigarette, staring blankly at the empty nightstand. There should have been a small teddy bear there. The cold breeze stirred the curtains, sweeping away the last traces of warmth in the room. Without looking at her, Edmund said hoarsely, "I'll have the driver take you home." Kristen was the girl Edmund had a crush on during his teenage years. Back then, he wasn't the respected CEO he was today. He was just an ordinary, even somewhat miserable boy. His parents were constantly at each other's throats, fighting over their impending divorce. To them, his existence was nothing more than a burden, an obstacle to their freedom. Neither of them wanted this burden. He was like a ball being kicked back and forth, unwanted and unloved. A loner by nature, he fell for Kristen the moment he saw her surrounded by a crowd, the center of everyone's attention. Maybe it wasn't love at first sight, but he wanted her, the girl everyone else admired and desired. Back then, the gap between their social statuses was too wide, and he could only watch her from afar, never daring to approach. So when Kristen, now a famous celebrity, reached out to him and practically threw herself into his arms, he knew she wanted something. But even though he was fully aware of her motives, he still couldn't resist her. After Kristen left, Edmund placed his phone beside his pillow, wondering how many days it would take before Joanna called him. He knew Joanna must have seen the intimate photos of him and Kristen, that's why she had burned their old pictures. He admitted he had crossed a line tonight with Kristen. But he had stopped himself in time before things spiraled out of control. If Joanna was really that angry, he figured he would just swallow his pride and coax her back. Edmund always knew that he loved Joanna. But he couldn't stand the monotony of everyday life, and he couldn't accept a relationship that felt too ordinary. When he pursued Joanna, he had done so with grand, public gestures that everyone talked about. But after they got together, the excitement faded, and he grew bored. To him, these women who threw themselves at him were nothing more than distractions from his dull reality. Joanna would get jealous. She would cry, her eyes turning red as she asked why he kept hurting her. Outwardly, he acted irritated by her emotional outbursts, but deep down, he secretly enjoyed seeing her heartache. Look, he would think to himself. Even the woman everyone sees as an unattainable goddess still breaks down and begs for my affection. But at some point, Joanna stopped reacting. She no longer questioned him. No longer lashed out. She just stood by quietly, watching his reckless behavior with cold indifference. Friends tried to warn him. Destiny, Joanna's best friend, had yelled at him countless times. But he was too obsessed with testing the limits of Joanna's love. He needed to know that no matter what he did, she wouldn't leave him. What he didn't realize was that every time he broke her heart, Joanna silently tucked that pain away. The sweet memories from their first 6 months together were eventually drowned by the countless betrayals that followed. Disappointment grew into regret, an endless, suffocating regret. By the time he finally understood his own feelings, it was too late. 3 months after Joanna left, the media couldn't get enough of Edmund and Kristen's increasingly public displays of affection. Rumors even swirled that they were getting married. But behind the scenes, away from the cameras, things were different. One night, Edmund shook off Kristen's hand in frustration, lighting a cigarette. As the smoke curled around his fingers, his thoughts drifted. Joanna had always hated the smell of cigarettes. If she were here, she would glare at him and snatch the cigarette away without a word. Sensing the shift in his mood, Kristen paused. Smoothing the folds of her dress, she turned to leave. Her heels clicked against the floor, but she stopped after a few steps and glanced back at him. Her voice was laced with mockery. "Isn't this what you wanted?" she said. "Now that Joanna's gone, why are you acting so lovesick?" "She's just throwing a tantrum." "She'll come back," he replied coldly. "And whatever happens between us is none of your business." Kristen chuckled softly. "Haven't you heard the saying? Belated affection is worth less than dirt." Then she made her terms clear. Give me the lead role in Kane's next film, and I promise I won't say a word to Joanna. 6 months after Joanna left, panic finally set in. Edmund started having the same recurring dream. In it, Joanna stood in a wedding dress, radiant and beautiful like the moon. But the man holding her hand, the one she vowed to spend her life with, wasn't him. His belief that she would eventually come back began to crumble under the weight of those dreams and his endless longing. Desperate, he reached out to the one person who might know where Joanna was, her best friend, Destiny. He orchestrated a situation Destiny couldn't refuse. And while she was distracted, he stole her phone's SIM card. Before calling Joanna, he drank heavily to gather his courage. Surrounded by empty bottles, he clutched the old photographs he had painstakingly reprinted. His fingers traced each picture, as if they could bring back the warmth he had once taken for granted. When he finally dialed her number, all the longing and regret surged to the surface. What he wanted to say was simple: "Joanna, I miss you." But what came out was, "Haven't you played around enough? Come back." He knew now how much he loved her. He just wanted her back. Wanted her to come home, to let him hold her again, and give him the peace he so desperately craved. But the voice that answered wasn't hers. It was a man's voice, calm, lazy, and unmistakably possessive. "Edmund," the man said smoothly, "she's moved on." In that instant, a storm of emotions crashed through him. But he clung to his denial. Joanna loved him. She was just angry. This was just another one of her games, right? Then he heard the voice he had been yearning for. "Edmund, we broke up," Joanna said quietly. "Please, stop interfering with my life." A soft murmur came from the other side. "Joanna, it's us now," the man said, nuzzling against her neck. Joanna laughed, planting a gentle kiss on his lips. "Yes," she whispered. "It's our life now." Edmund hung up, numb and broken. The pain that spread through him was sharper and more consuming than any physical wound. He finally understood the agony Joanna had once endured. In a reckless haze, he got into his car and sped off, only to crash and nearly lose his life. When he finally woke up in the hospital, his first words were, "Does she know I was in an accident?" His friend hesitated before answering, pity filling their eyes. "Destiny told her," they said. "She wishes you a speedy recovery." At that moment, he realized the truth: he had lost her. Completely and irrevocably. Time moved on. At a press conference, a reporter asked him, "You've had a smooth and successful life. Any regrets?" For a moment, Edmund was lost in thought. Then, with a bitter smile, he lowered his gaze and said softly, "I realized too late. The end."